sacrifice, exactly. I sacrifice my happiness for my kids. You bet I did. You bet I did.
Wow, why did I not discuss this show sooner? Guess we're gonna find out. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about moral... I can't say the word yet because it hasn't been 30 seconds, so I'm gonna just call it moral panic, okay? Or more specifically, a character that you've all wanted me to tackle for literal years at this point. Clay Puppington. But for one reason or another, I haven't really discussed until now. I even did a collab with Lydia Loves Timelines where one of the sections was on bad cartoon dads, and it was on Clay, and I thought about doing it back then, and I was like, I tried. I would watch all these video essays, but like, I just could not find the time or the nerve to get into it. It's like, I was like, oh wait, okay, it's been like about 30 seconds. Okay, so we're gonna review Moral Orel. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Now, back when I reviewed South Park full time, I said the worst parents in the town, if not animation itself, were the Stotches, Linda and Steve and Chris. While all the South Park parents suck to some degree, well, Steve and Chris and Linda suck to a special degree. They regularly ground their son for real or imagined reasons, and they've canonically tried to kill him for their own selfish reasons. In one of the show's best episodes, Butters' very own episode, Butters found proof that Steve and Chris was cheating on Linda with random men by going to bathhouses and movies, and Linda thought the only way to get revenge and to cleanse herself and Butters was to be sure that her and her son were no longer alive, so to speak, only for it to turn out that Butters was alive this whole time, so they had to lie and say some Puerto Rican guy kidnapped him, or killed him, or both. As many of you have told me, it's really not that different from what Clay Puppington does or has done. If I had to describe Clay, think of him as Steve and Chris in stop motion. But what if he wasn't played as a joke and had actual ramifications on the people around him, besides his family? Say what you want about Steve and Chris, but 98% of the time, he only really hurts his immediate family, and he does think what he's doing is what you're supposed to do. Whereas Clay, yeah, no. So let's discuss. But since this is my first Moral Orel video, I'll give some background. Spoilers will follow. Moral Orel is a show that used to air on Adult Swim, and if I had to describe it, it was very, very, very ahead of its time, at least a decade. You know how a lot of shows nowadays, like BoJack Horseman, F is for Family, heck, even something like Steven Universe or Gravity Falls or Hell of a Boss, start off as comedies, usually dark comedies, only for the later episodes to turn it into more of a comedy drama, if you can even call it that, to the point where you can't rewatch earlier episodes the same way ever again because they sprinkled in little hints that are now an extra dose of tragic, like how Blitz acting the way he did in Murder Family when Martha tried to set him and Millie on fire probably wasn't just him messing with her, it was likely also a trauma response. Yeah, I'd say you have Moral Orel to thank for that. It came out in 2005 and Adult Swim found it kinda depressing, so much so they actually cut it down from the 5-season order to 3 seasons, and they shortened the final season from 20 episodes to 13. Also, Hell of a Boss fans, if you need another reason to watch it, Morgana Ignis used to work on it. She even animated the lost episode Abstinence. Although, take this with a grain of salt, I hear she wasn't the biggest fan of working on the show, and they also still credit her under her dead name, so Anyhow, the show focuses on Orel, who is voiced by Carolyn Lawrence. Yes, that Carolyn Lawrence, the voice of Cindy Vortex and Sandy Cheeks. Orel, which censors, his name is O-R-E-L, is a devout Protestant and lives in the town of Morrilton, which is also devoutedly Christian. They're kind of like fundamentalists. Think about it like if fundamentalists ran a town. But as the show goes deeper, we learn that the people of his town aren't as moral as they appear. If anything, they just use religion to justify their own shortcomings and hypocrisies, because Moral Orel doesn't make fun of religion itself, since it is my belief that there isn't really anything wrong with religion itself. It's a tool, which should change with the people and the times. Rather, the show makes fun of the fact that people, even good people, will pick and choose which parts of their religion they want to follow. Because Christianity is contradictory, but hey, if you're a God-fearing Christian, you gotta follow all the parts. Now, this is a very good show, albeit some of season 1 episodes are very hit and miss. But much like Space Dandy, you do have to watch them because they'll make more sense later and be extra tragic. Plus, I got to meet the creator of the show, not of Space Dandy, of Moral Orel, at GalaxyCon Columbus, and Semi hung out with him at a panel, and he is super nice. Clay is Orel's father, and he's married to Blaberta, Clay's mother. He's also the mayor of the town, which they say in like the second to last episode.
Orel?
Dad!
What are you doing here?
You're the mayor?
Don't remind me. Stinking dead-end job.
Which I think is very fitting and puts episodes like God's Image in a new light, as what control he can't really exert at home, well, he can easily exert it on a whole town. Normally, a typical episode, at least starting at season 1 and part of season 2, will go like this. And I'll use God's Image as an example because it's my favorite episode, and it makes me laugh the hardest next to Orel's movie premiere. Orel will encounter something religious related and go to the adults in town for help, like him noticing the Figurellis, who for the record are Italians, are different from the townsfolk due to their skin color, because they're not Caucasian. They're olive-skinned.
That bandage doesn't seem to be working, does it, Billy?
Sure it does. I feel better already.
Yeah, but it doesn't match your skin. Maybe I bought the wrong kind.
He goes to the adults who all give him poor advice, either because they don't want to deal with him or because they secretly think that way. Like when he asks why the Figurellis live the way they do or why they look different, he's told by his dad and his mom that God wants certain people to be separate from others.
If you ask me, which you never do, I'd say that God wants different people to be separated from us, Orel. That's why he put Europe all the way over wherever he put it.
That's right.
AKA a religious way of saying they're racist. Because you know how they say, like, we're all made in God's image? Well, why is it some people are made in God's image more than others? But Orel, being the naive, well-meaning scamp he is, decides to actually implement such maneuvers. He makes sure the Figurellis are separate from everyone, like his parents told him to, but he makes sure they're actually getting the best out of it. Because when he hears the phrase separate but equal, he means it. So the Figurellis get 5-star treatment, which they all love, whereas everybody else starts to suffer for it. And all the kids start putting on Figurelli face to match and try and get the same benefits. Get it? Cultural appropriation. So the adults decide enough is enough. Segregation sucks, because now it sucks for them.
Round-the-clock enjoyable whistling tunes and a no-prob attitude, resulting in hundreds of youths volunteering for the remodeling of the town council building.
What is happening to our community?
The adults will realize that whatever happened can be traced back to Orel, and Clay will ask to see him in his study, cue a gulp, and then a beating with his belt, since, get it? Spare the rod, spoil the child. Even though apparently that's not what that means. Clay will say what he did was bad, give him more bad advice that borders on insane troll logic, usually give him a lost commandment or two, which is really just something made up, and then they'll make up, and Clay will rise from his chair, and his pants will fall off.
Somehow you've turned things topsy-turvy. You've made it inconvenient for the racists, not the racers. And at that point, why even discriminate? So no more monkeying around with grown-up issues, young man.
Okay, that was a lot, but that's typically how an episode would go. To the point where season 3 actually addressed the pattern by having Reverend Putty try and tell Clay at a community meeting at the church to be a proper parent to his son and, parent his son outside of just spanking him, which Clay refuses to do.
You're asking me to take responsibility for what Orel does?
I know it's a tall order.
I'm not even responsible for my own action.
What if you quit drinking?
Yeah, what if?
I hate you so much, man. Usually it's the fault of Clay, but as will be a big theme here, he refuses to take responsibility for his actions because it means admitting he's not perfect and he did something wrong. Heck, Turn the Other Cheek, another episode I love, finally had Clay get some just desserts for what he did, from his own son. Orel is listening to a record about the biblical phrase, turn the other cheek, which is actually a pretty catchy song, not gonna lie. If you're unaware, the phrase comes from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Blessed all the cheesemakers, and basically means that you should try and peacefully retaliate if you can. Get it? Like, kill him with kindness. However, this episode shows that while many people, especially fundies, tend to use it as a way to say, ignore abuse and be a doormat, well, that's not what that means. Even Clay puts it the right way.
The war cry of the fraidy cats. The phrase has been misused ever since violence became out of style. That saying should only be used when someone insults you or jokes about your wife.
Yes, you should turn the other cheek, but if you need to defend yourself or others, go ahead. But smaller offenses, like somebody makes a passive-aggressive comment or if peace is an option, turn the other cheek. As Orel believes he must allow a bully to bully him and beat the crap out of him in order to be like Jesus. However, Clay, in probably his only moment of actually being a good father, tells Orel it's perfectly okay to stand up for himself and fight back against said bully. I mean, come on, turn the other cheek? What about do unto others? But he says it the wrong way.
God doesn't want you hurt. He needs you to protect yourself so you can defend his righteousness. You see, you've got to protect yourself before trouble starts.
Oh, dude, you're gonna regret that. So Orel takes this to mean rather than only use violence to defend yourself against bullies or people who wish to do you harm, well, he should preemptively establish dominance. Not by ing people, but by beating the tar and decking people before they have a chance to do it to him. Like if somebody so much as makes a fist at him, even for something like praying, or like how I do it, kind of like put my fist to the side, Orel needs to instill the fear of God into them. And he gradually escalates from just random townsfolk until he starts hitting his own mother, and even Clay himself. He deserves that more than you know, Orel. So Clay actually takes him to a study and says that for once, he's just gonna pretend to be a good dad. Because he knows what he did was wrong, but he's not gonna say it.
Also, you did follow my advice, kiddo. So punishing you would be an admission of wrongness on my part. And believe you me, that ain't gonna happen.
So Clay doesn't beat him this time. He's just like, I'm gonna pretend that I'm good so your mother thinks we're actually doing father and son stuff.
A smokescreen?
Yes, it's a valuable tool I use in order to give your mother the illusion that I'm actually doing my job as your father.
Now, obviously, by this point, we've established that Clay is a very crappy dad, and not just to Orel. See, Orel has siblings. He has another brother, Shapey, who is 7 years old, but he's so neglected that he acts like a toddler. I mean, his mother still feeds him from her drink place.
And now it's affecting our precious society.
Oh, and I thought Robert Aaron had problems. In season 2, The Lord's Prayer, the family gets another family of neighbors, who are basically just carbon copies of them, but with little name changes. I mean, the daughter, Christina, is basically just Orel in a dress, down to having the same VA.
Hi. Hi. I'm Orel. I'm Christina. Hi.
Hi. They invite the new family over for dinner, and oh my goodness Christ on a stick. They say the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father if you're Catholic, slightly different.
Please, just leave.
Gladly.
You don't even understand what the Lord's Prayer means! How dare you! Forgive your debtors! Forgive your trespassers!
You might laugh, but apparently this is a real thing in a lot of Christian circles. At least they didn't make each other join hands like I had to. Dirty, dirty Sunday school people. This causes the new family to move away, but they accidentally take Shapey and leave behind his equivalent, Block, and only his brother actually notices. I mean, Clay kind of notices in season 3, but you know what I mean.
Ooh, Ren.
Huh? Huh.
Yay, birdie.
Aww. I think what's worse is season 1 reveals that he neglects Shapey for a reason. Shapey, unlike Orel, is not his biological son. He's the son of Coach Danielle Stopframe, aka the man that Clay is cheating on Blubberta with.
Sometimes I wish I could put your brain in my wife's head.
Merry Christmas, Clay.
Merry Christmas.
So, I hate to say it, he really doesn't have a right to get mad at his wife if they're both sleeping with the same guy. And no, it's not like Turtle Heart from Wicked, where they're sharing the same guy, as in like a polycule. Neither knew the other was, which is ironic considering how they share a room, and they have separate beds with a modesty divider cover.
I don't even remember conceiving this kid.
Please. When do you ever remember?
All I do is try to forget.
At least you know he's yours.
Yes, stereotypically, Christianity is homophobic, and the thing is, Clay will openly preach about it being bad, and even Blubberta does it once or twice. But as far as he's concerned, he's committing 2 sins, adultery and homosexuality, and he refuses to admit it, even if, no, I do not think being queer is a sin, but you know what I mean. By his own doctrine, he's sinning, and he knows it, and he refuses to own up to it.
What kind of lesson, big guy?
Oh, I don't know, Danielle. I'm just so tense.
Oh, come to Papa.
The two actually do seriously consider the idea of divorce, but they don't go through with it in God's image for a few reasons if I had to guess. First off, Clay does mention appearance sake. They need to appear to be a happy, loving family, even though by the end of season 2, they're basically just 2 people who live together.
You and Shapey are still young, needy, impressionable, so your mother and I have decided to stay together, if only for appearances. The last thing we want people to think is that we don't care about our own kids.
We later learn he's also the mayor, and any politician will make it seem like they're a loving, happy family or a family man, especially if they're conservative. Remember, we've only had 1 bachelor president, James Buchanan, because it makes you relatable to voters, and if you can't govern at home, how would you govern a town or a state or a country? Second, divorce is a very bad word in Christianity, and in most sects, it's practically unthinkable. Some would rather die than divorce, since marriage is supposed to be everlastingly binding and forever. Even in catechism, you can't remarry in a church if you divorce. Annulment maybe, but not divorce. Plus, many, even if they are for divorce, view it as splitting a family apart, because clearly you need 2 parents living together in order to feel equal love. But I talk about divorce all the time on my channel, and I already talked about it with regular-sized Rudy, so I won't discuss it any further. So Clay decides that yes, they're going to stay together, if only for the sake of appearances. They basically just have a paper marriage, even if they're both miserable together and they likely be better off apart. But why tell everybody what they had simply didn't work, that they're pumping life into a bloated corpse?
Well, I think you can give me credit for this one.
That. Oh, also Clay gives Orel the news.
Mom and Shapey must be getting restless.
I would kill my husband if he went to eat Chinese food with our son and he made me wait in the car and didn't give me any. I mean, I don't mind if he ate Chinese food with our son. Dude's gotta eat. Kids gotta eat. But I would mind, like, again, if he just, like, let me in there. Didn't even give me, like, an egg roll or anything. Just saying, even if Shapey isn't biologically Clay's son, well, for all intents and purposes, Clay spent the entirety of Shapey's life raising him and rearing him. As far as I'm concerned, he's Shapey's dad in every way, but actually making Shapey. And I realize he probably didn't leave Blaberta in the car with Shapey because he thinks women are caregivers, or he needs to do a quick chat with Orel, or he thinks he needs to tell Shapey too. He probably left the two in the car because he hates them. Orel is the only child who's actually his. Blaberta is just a blob he's stuck with for appearance sake, and Shapey is her bastard spawn, not his. It's really sad. Everything about Clay is sad. Which brings us to the two-parter of nature. Now, every show that undergoes what we call therapist syndrome has that one episode that completely changes the events of the series, where once you watch this one episode, you will never see the show the same way ever again. Steven Universe has A Single Pale Rose, or Growing Pains, or even Mirror Gem, and Moral Orel has Nature. Nature is a two-parter, and it's all about Orel finally having his worldview on his parents and arguably his whole town shattered. And the thing is, the hints were there, which makes this a way better episode. See, the episode that aired right before this, and another one of my favorites, was Orel's movie premiere, where Orel makes a stop-motion film of his adventures from season 1, which is kind of meta, but hey. And the thing is, well, even if Orel is mostly innocent and naive, there are hints that he knows his life is crap deep down. The adults in the movie are all portrayed in a bad light. Like, Clay is a big bad wolf who constantly drinks and beats Orel.
Hey, Orel Puppington, my son. Good.
Yes, Clay Puppington, my father who looks like a puppy because he is loyal and good.
Lies! Heck, his belt actually grows to the size of a snake that strangles him, aka Clay's belt, implying that he hates when his dad actually beats him, but he thinks, like, as a Christian, he needs to be beaten. Or even if he tells Reverend Putty he's super righteous, his puppet is a giant ape who destroys everything.
Respected and righteous man in Moralton, it really is a wonderful responsibility to be so important. I mean, I am so wondrously wise and blessed.
Since even if Reverend Putty is the only adult who actually wises up to what happens and has a really good arc in the show, well, that doesn't change the fact that he has led Orel astray before, or he has been mean to him. Heck, Principal Fakey is even a giant cobra who wraps around Orel, which I do think it's cute all the adults went out to this, like, little movie premiere of this kid, but yeah, he does not have flattering things to say about them. The only exception is probably Mr. Figarelli, and even then, by that part of the show, Miss Censordoll's teachings have made Orel think that eggs are evil. So remember how he was told in God's image that it's okay to be racist? Yeah, he probably still thinks that way. You know that one of the signs for if a child is abused is by looking at the artwork they make, right? It makes you wonder if that's what Orel thinks of everyone, or if he subconsciously thought that way. Although, short tangent, I like how this episode implies all of the kids know deep down that their town is screwed up, but only Joe is the one most willing to say it.
That actually looks like Principal Fakey, the dumb guy in school. He cheats on his wife. Hey, Orel, hooray for being dumb. 3 cheers. Hip hip. Who cares?
You know, it really sucks that Jimmy Pesto's voice actor, because that is Jimmy Pesto's voice actor, turned out to be the way he was, and apparently was also like an a-hole to work with, because like he's very funny here. Okay, so we've gotten to nature, which is likely why they aired Orel's movie premiere as the episode before, because it's funny, it helps be a palate cleanser, and it also like reminds you of what happened. The episode picks up from the end of another. Orel is getting the rod from his dad for doing something, go watch season 3, and his dad, spur of the moment, invites him to go on a hunting trip, a father and son hunting trip, aka a manly thing, when we know damn well he likely considered Orel the furthest thing from manly, which is likely why he's trying so hard to toughen him up. But in the Christian doctrine, men go hunting because they're men roles, because God gave Abraham dominion over all the animals, so Adam has to kill them all for sustenance. How dare Orel potentially be vegetarian? That is very unchristian.
Man has been able to artificially replicate many things that God originally invented, but there's one thing we'll never be quite able to copy: playing God.
Clay, I just said that. Stop mansplaining. The thing is, Orel is pretty uncomfortable with the idea of shooting a gun, and I don't blame him. Guns are scary. Plus, when you're hunting, you're not shooting with a small, likely more manageable handgun. You're shooting with a gigantic rifle or shotgun, probably the same size as you, if not bigger. Especially considering how small, like, Orel is, it's likely gonna be like his size. Just saying, like, shooting games are fun, but it's totally different to actually use one of those. The thing is, Clay doesn't know his son, or he doesn't care to know his son, or he doesn't just care about the fact he has obvious discomfort.
Yes, Orel, I think it's time for you to experience the wonder and majesty of shooting a gun.
Well, I don't mind going along and maybe just watching.
Ironically, there are ways they could bond by doing something manly like killing. If you wanted to take Orel on a manly activity that involved killing another animal, he could try fishing. It's still manly. And hey, you don't have to kill the fish. Feed the fish. Take it away, voice it thing.
Feed the fish.
Thank you. You can always throw the fish back, but why won't Clay do that? Because Clay believes in traditional male roles, and because honestly, he just wants to lord himself over his son for once. Fishing is fun, but it's also kind of boring from experience. Crabbing is where it's at. But yeah, okay. Clay is a miserable man who uses Christianity as a tool to weaponize the abuse of his son and to force himself on others, to the point where he has an entire hallway of guns in his study.
These babies.
Wow! I never noticed all this before.
Yeah, they sort of blend into the woodwork.
One of the guns he shows Orel, which will make more sense later, is Old Gunny, a small little pistol that's been in the family for generations.
The head of the household would hand off Old Gunny to his firstborn son. Here, why don't you try this one instead?
Again, it'll make sense later, but it shows just how fake and honestly, this whole thing is, I hate to say. Like, Clay doesn't want this to better bond with his son. He wants to do it because he wants to toughen Orel up and because it's what men do. And because he wants to feel good about himself, Orel just happens to be there. And it gets worse. For instance, as fun as a camping trip can be, I think to some degree it's still kind of dangerous. Yes, they aren't away from home, they're just going to like a nature plane probably like 10 minutes away, but they are still going to a dangerous place they don't know or understand. Especially since they're city dwellers. And accidents happen, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Safety first. You should pack food, toiletries, all that good stuff. And hey, hunting equipment besides rifles, after all, how are you gonna bring it back and what are you gonna do with it? Orel thinks about this idea, wanting to bring a first aid kit, but Clay refuses even the idea of that or the idea of food. He wants it to be a catch only what you eat trip, even if Orel is not at a point where he probably could do that. Like he's gonna starve all weekend. All because he wants to be a man or prove he is a man that badly, because honestly, a lot of what Clay does really feels like he has this huge tendency to want to prove himself to nobody, if only to himself. And I know some of you say it's also because Clay associates abuse with love, and I agree, but this is just a me thing. Part of me also thinks a reason he tries so hard to be a man is that he's a closeted bisexual. After all, many closeted men will try to seem as manly as possible in order to dissuade the idea from others, or from themselves, or to appear to be something they're not. Even if, I hate to break it to you, you can still be manly, and you can also be queer at the same time without exhibiting any gay traits or stereotypes. It doesn't help the town he lives in likely views those stereotypes as gospel, pun not intended, so he doesn't have to try as hard as he thinks he does. But he unfortunately still thinks he does. On the hunting trip, Clay continues to get drunker and drunker, and we see he really has no idea of what he's doing. For example, he has no patience with Orel when he can't shoot an animal, even if this is Orel's first time doing all this. And he wants Orel to shoot a deer, and not just any deer, a doe, aka a female deer.
Never fraternize with the enemy.
Oh, she's so cute.
Okay, for the love of God, Orel, get that poor, wretched creature in your sights and put it out of its misery.
The thing is, any hunter will tell you, even me, the one animal you don't shoot is a female animal. And it doesn't matter what species. Females are the ones who carry the babies, animal-wise, and you could do irreparable harm to the local ecosystem if you were to shoot a female. Feminism! Heck, I'll even go a step further and say that you can't kill certain animals with certain attributes. I used to go crabbing every summer, and there were rules posted everywhere, and diagrams that you were only allowed to keep the male crabs. And they also included diagrams to tell which was a male and which was a female, which is usually by checking on their bellies. And they had to be a certain size, like if they were over or under, you had to throw them back. I know nothing about hunting like deer or bears or any of that stuff, so if I'm wrong, please correct me, but I feel like such a thing would also apply to hunting bigger game, which is why you don't pack lightly. If you think you're packing lightly, you're not packing enough. But instead of letting it go, Clay shoots it, and then he bullies Orel for being pacifistic.
I win! And you lose.
Rude. Part of me also wonders if he feels like Orel is heading down the same path, especially in terms of how he is around men, so he's trying to dissuade his son from it.
With all you people as role models, no wonder my son is sensitive.
Just saying, like, he did have Christina, but Christina was forced to move away, and now he only really hangs out around other boys. Now, normally when Clay makes fun of Orel, he does it in a passive-aggressive kind of way, or he appears to have a mask of patience and understanding, like a sitcom dad from the 1950s, even when he's giving bad advice, even when he's spanking him. Since chances are, he's not the one who has to deal with Orel. It's usually his mom or the other townsfolk. He only does his job after Orel makes a mistake. But we do see this whole mask slip a couple of times, especially when Orel isn't around, like when he was fighting with Blaberta or when he went on a racist rant in God's image. Here is probably the first time we see him actually be truly angry with Orel or not act like a dad, since he's drinking. And as Blaberta will say later, drinking brings out the true you.
He doesn't change, Orel. That's just his true nature coming out.
Okay, it's my personal opinion that if somebody is that deep in the bottle, you can't reason with them because you aren't talking to them. And unfortunately, chances are, when they drink, as contradictory as it is to say, because I'm probably going to contradict what I just said, while they are themselves, they also aren't. Like, for many people, when they drink, that's how they truly come out. They put on a mask, and alcohol is one of the few times that mask comes off because they basically ripped it off themselves. Clay is an alcoholic, not a problem drinker. He's an alcoholic. He cannot live without it. But there is a lot of conflict throughout the show, especially caused by his own mistakes that have made him drink more, because many alcoholics will often end up drinking due to stress, and it leads to a deeper cycle of alcoholic abuse, which, when you think about it, through his own belief system, he really should not be doing. It's another way he flaunts the rules of Christianity. See, Clay's a fundamentalist, and fundamentalists detest alcohol, which I was curious about, and besides the whole grape juice argument, which I would tear to shreds if I had the time to get into, the big reason is it's derived from the moral panic of the 1800s, due to the idea of overconsumption. When you're around alcohol, you won't be able to control yourself, as drinking itself isn't a sin. For many people though, getting drunk is, because that's when you lose all reason and you can do something crazy like beat your wife or get into a car accident. However, since I love the idea of rabbit holes, apparently there is a quote some fundamentalists use to justify the fact that they can't drink, even though people get drunk in the Bible all the time. Therefore, let us not sleep as the rest do, but let us stay alert and sober. Those who sleep go to sleep at night, and those who are drunk get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet that is hope for salvation. 1 Thessalonians 5:6-8. That's another way the show makes the point about loopholes serving a purpose. By Clay's own faith, it's okay to have the occasional drink, so long as you know your limits. But he's a man, and men must drink as much as they can to prove that they're men, because having a high tolerance means you're a man. So he has to keep drinking, and he has to drink to deal with what's going on in his life, even if he knows that he probably shouldn't. And he can't rely on other people to raise Orel for him, so he has to keep drinking or he'll die of boredom. Especially here, it's literally just the two of them, to the point where it's actually super dangerous to be around him, especially then. Not just because he's in the woods and he has no faculty to be around a gun, but because now that he's drunk and he has literal weapons, he will harm anything, even hunting dogs.
That's not a rabbit, it's someone's hunting dog.
Orel, hunting dogs are just nature's rabbits.
And I feel so bad for Orel here, because he's now realizing his father drinks like a fish. It's not just a fun activity only adults get to do. Then he's sinning as far as he knows, and he knows he's unsafe, but he can't get away from him. He's just a kid. And even if he could, like if he could just drive home or something, well, you can't really reason with an alcoholic, but you can't trust them not to hurt themselves or others, especially if they're left alone. And to any of my viewers who are problem drinkers or are alcoholics and are trying to change that, I don't mean this in a bad way. I only mean it if you know you have a problem and you're doing nothing to fix it. Clay clearly knows he has a problem and he refuses to get help because that it means admitting something is his fault and he's ruining the people around him, which we know from episodes like Turn the Other Cheek, he refuses to do, even if it's ruining his relationship with his son. It's just that this is the first time his drinking isn't played off as a joke, just something horrible. Kinda like his bad marriage, it's an issue festering and ruining everything, and he refuses to bring it to light. Orel is hungry, but as we've established, his father never packed any food, because he wanted to kill something and then eat that. He offers to go shoot something, but Orel refuses, both because I doubt his father knows how to like cure the meat or cook it or any of that stuff. I mean, come on, cooking is a woman's job, and because...
I think you might be too drunk. I'm not really comfortable hunting with you right now.
I'm proud of you, Orel. For once, he's actually setting a boundary and talking back to his father. I mean, it sucks this is when his innocence is getting shattered, but you know what I mean. But yes, I hate to say it, this is the first time he's likely ever stood up to his father. Turn the Other Cheek doesn't count. In that instance, he wasn't attacking his father consciously because he was angry, even though I do think deep down, like, yeah, he probably meant it. Here, he is getting angry, but part of him still wants to see the good in his father. After all, he's a Christian. His father's a Christian. Christian, and he's also a sheltered little boy. His father was his hero because fathers are the head of the household. They're the ones who come after God and Jesus. He's the one who taught him about God. But the thing is, every child has that moment, that aha moment, where they realize their parent isn't perfect, that they're people like everyone else. Or worse, especially if you grew up in toxic or abusive families, that they're just messed up people, and no matter what you say, they will never change. And the wool has finally been pulled.
You're not comfortable hunting with me? Have you ever tried hunting with you?
See what I mean? And let me put it out there again, no, drinking is not bad, I drink all the time. But it's all about knowing your limits and hey, time and place. Clay can drink at home because he does become a bad person, but it's easier for him there. For argument's sake, if he gets drunk at home, he can just go off to bed and sleep it off. Or if he goes out to a bar, there's gonna be other people who can drive him home and make sure he's safe. If he gets drunk in the woods, they're literally stranded. Clay, however, does what all alcoholic dads do when they're wrong, and they know they're wrong, and they're drunk. He drinks some more, and he starts to tell Orel likely what he really thinks about him, or what he wishes he could say about him when he's sober.
Your cup is always half empty. Now look at me. You should be more like your old man and look on the bright side of life.
He encourages him to drink and be like him, which from Orel's perspective is just a violent person. A violent, horrible, satanic person. Because as far as Clay knows, drinking makes him happy and makes him forget. But does it really? Or does it make him forget if only for a short time?
Why do you quit working on me?
She always fools me, Orel.
And you're forced to stay in and pull out, stay in and pull out.
We'll get to this later, since I don't think he's just talking about alcohol and comparing it to a woman. He's likely also talking about his wife, but he can't reconcile with himself that on some level, it's also his fault for continuing to stay with her, or keeping his relationship going for as long as he has. So better to blame all women rather than this one specific woman. Because again, biblically, women are easily led astray, and they need men to guide them, or they're evil temptresses like Jezebel. Just saying, my independent study in college was on Christian fundamentalism and how it breeds abusers, and something I learned was because a lot of Christian sects are patriarchal, it kind of rewards the abusers for being abusive, especially in like IBLP, because the father becomes right after God and Jesus, and then it's the mother, and then it's the kids, in that specific order. I think what makes it worse here is the symbolism. Notice how the worse Clay gets and the drunker he gets, the redder he gets, which you can argue is likely because he's like drunk and you get like usually a face flash when you do, but you know who else is red and evil? The devil. Orel is now seeing him as he truly is, the devil, because he realizes his father is everything he and the townsfolk preach against. But Orel just had this realization about this one man, not the whole town. And notice how his face gets fuller and fuller of flies, almost like Beelzebub, another name for the devil and the lord of the flies. And what are flies? Vile, stinking beasts who touch filth. And he's too drunk to just swat them away. And he's also too drunk to notice that Orel is pointing a gun at him, likely so scared he might actually pull it if only for his own safety. And he does! But does he shoot his father?
You shoot one thing this whole trip? Count 'em, one thing! And it's 2 of my last bottles of liquor!
Can we talk about the geniusness of this statement? How Clay tries to sound smart but just comes off as contradictory? Like he tries to be this hero to his son to keep the last shreds of herohood alive around him, not knowing or caring that Orel now knows he isn't one. But even if Orel shot 2 things, well, he technically only shot alcohol, which to Clay is just one thing. So he can further bully him in that regard, like, oh, you're so stupid you couldn't even shoot me. Clay decides that enough is enough, and he'll do what he always wanted to do to Orel, and hit him with his belt. But he's too drunk to properly get the belt off this time, and he refuses help from Orel, because he just got done calling Orel a sissy who can't do anything. Toxic masculinity.
Dad!
Get away from me!
What I find interesting is that he's so drunk, he doesn't think he could just take off his shoes. So better to stumble around looking like a pathetic creep than actually ask for help. But in his stumble, he ends up shooting Orel with his rifle.
Orel, what have you done?
I got shot by you.
You sure did. You've got to learn to be more careful, son.
Now, a few things. Remember how I said earlier in the video that moral Orel was cut short? Well, originally, they were going to have full-on giant storylines, with the biggest being that Miss Sensordoll was trying to take over the town by using voodoo, which they do kind of imply in the episode alone, and the first way she did that was by compelling Clay to shoot his son. Honestly, while I do wish we saw the series properly end the way the creator intended, part of me is glad this one plot point never happened, since I think if it were to, it would take away the impact from Clay's actions actions if he wasn't technically the one who shot his son. If it was a freak accident on his end because he couldn't put the bottle down, that would make more sense. And that would show just how bad of a person he was, that he couldn't stop drinking just for 5 minutes. Even throughout the rest of the season, yes, he does wonder if Fran, who's Miss Sensordoll's real name, was the one to do it, but hey, Clay isn't responsible for what he does. It's the bottle. Why should he feel guilt if he can blame it on somebody else, and he actually really can in this instance?
You have special powers, don't you? Powers? Yeah. You made me shoot Orel. I know it. I had a dream.
You flatter me, young Puppington.
Just saying, you're still responsible for your actions even if you drink. Voodoo, not so much. Second, this is why Clay is the worst cartoon father for me, and likely for the rest of you. Like, worse than Steve and Chris, and for one simple reason. What he does is not played as a joke. Even Butterscotch Horseman, while he was abusive of BoJack, many of his actions played off in a comical manner, even when he's sleeping with his secretary and BoJack watches, since he was meant to deconstruct cartoon fathers like Francis Griffin. And most cartoon dads, since they tend to have their actions played off as jokes, whatever they do, no matter how bad, shouldn't matter in the end, right? Be it treating Mick like a lightning rod or grounding your son for 20 years so you and your wife can go see a movie. And hey, even the worst cartoon fathers make me laugh every now and again. I might have laughed at Clay in God's Image, but very little in the actual show, even when his actions weren't dramatized yet. After a certain point, nothing he does is funny, even looking back. It's just painfully realistic. Say, Stan Smith, the fact he wants to toughen his son up? Yeah, that's a little realistic. But by being a bully complete with childish jokes and a weirdo haircut, I don't think any dad would do that in real life, or at least I hope not. But in a show like American Dad, it's hilarious, darlings. Clay, his actions are 100% realistic. I can literally see this happening in real life. Chances are either you have a dad like him, you had a dad like him, you had a relative like him, or you knew a guy like him. There were so many Clay Puppingtons in real life that many of his actions just read like a documentary.
And attractive high heels about my drinking since we got here.
It's because you become a bad person when you drink.
Oh, I do I?
Still refusing to take responsibility, I see. See, Kitty, it was a dark talk. I did an accent, so I could try to loosen this up with some jokes. Yes, Catherine, they got it. You're just making it worse. The thing is, they could have treated Orel, but I guess first aid kits are for sissies, which actually he does have, despite what his father said.
I have some disinfectant in my first aid bag.
First aid? I thought I told you not to bring that.
Yeah, well...
Oh, little act of rebellion, good for you. Don't worry, tying a tourniquet is the one thing he knows how to do. I learned how to do it from watching Shark Week. But instead of using his own shirt, or a used one, he uses Orel's favorite shirt, which Orel specifically told him was his favorite shirt, just to spite him further.
My lucky shirt?
Well, maybe it'll finally start kicking in. I guess my lucky gun trumped your lucky shirt, Kitterino.
And then drinks all the rubbing alcohol that could have cleaned or made his wound less worse. Which makes Orel finally say the one thing he likely always wanted to tell his father but never had the courage to do.
Whoops.
I hate you.
Hate away, sister. Hate away.
Wow, just wow on both sides. I already brought up Orel's side, but I think with Clay, there's two ways of looking at it. The most obvious being that this no longer registers to him, because when you think about it, people might hate you hate yourself a lot more than they ever will, and they'll never understand. So why would it bother him? Like, he legitimately probably means it. Second, that he ruined his bond with his son that badly, that a once wide-eyed kid now sees the world for what it truly is, or at least his home, a broken, evil place. Or he's happy that he's done it. Like, yay, finally standing up for himself, only took me shooting him. Third, as we later learn, Clay on some level considers abuse to be a form of love. So maybe he's so drunk that he thinks this is Orel's way of finally saying I love you and it finally registering. Like, yay, I love my son and he loves me back. But the rubbing alcohol makes Clay finally pass the F out, even if it would likely kill him or blind him, but this is still a cartoon on some level. And Orel spends the next 13 hours in broken agony, being forced to shoot a bear to protect him and his father, despite his pleas.
Sorry, Mr. Bear, but my dad's a jerk.
Finally, Clay wakes up and...
You shot me in the leg?
No, I didn't.
Look.
Oh, I don't remember that. So that means it's not my fault.
I'm gonna hit you. For what little credit you can give him, he does eventually take Orel to a doctor when he's sober, but only because he knows said doctor won't blab. And said doctor, Dr. Potter's Wheel, is really not a good one. I mean, he killed his wife by giving her too much painkiller. When newsflash, dude, doctors aren't supposed to work on family members unless that's a last resort due to how unethical it can be. Like, Orel is really lucky he did not lose that leg. He will have lifelong problems though, but he didn't lose that leg. Doesn't help that he's also prescribed a fatty diet in order to help the leg clot. What? When Orel is finally in bed and with his mother, he realizes, holy heck, Mom is married to that thing, and she's still been married to that thing, since he only had the realization about his father, not his mother. I don't think he ever really does have one about his mom, and he likely thinks his mom is just as much a victim as he is, not realizing the truth is a lot more complicated because mutually toxic relationships are a thing, as are mutually abusive ones. So he asks her,
Men have to marry women.
But why did you marry Dad?
Oh, well. Why not?
That gives me the same vibe as whatever love means. That instead of saying that deep down he's a good guy or it was a legitimate accident or argument's sake she can't afford to leave him, which I can kind of get considering how she's a housewife and in Christianity women aren't supposed to aspire to anything big. Well, Alberta also hides her dislike of people behind religion. Men and women have to be married because that's what God says, even if the man is a raging alcoholic.
When he drinks, he changes.
Oh, he doesn't change, Orel. That's just his true nature coming out.
That's horrible but accurate. Now, you might be wondering what kind of a childhood did Clay have that made him the man he was. Was it a crybaby one, not unlike BoJack? Well, it's complicated and sad. In passing finally gives us the answer. Clay was raised as an only child by his father, Arthur, and his mother, Angela.
Remember, not a word to your mother. You know she has a weak heart.
Keep this in mind going forward. Also, keep it in mind that his parents both had the A initial and he doesn't. As a child, Clay was shown Old Gunny by Arthur and told that Old Gunny was in the family for generations. It's the tradition that the firstborn son get Old Gunny and then they celebrate by going on a hunting trip as a coming-of-age ritual. However, for reference, which is kind of important, although it doesn't really make sense, Clay grew up in what I'm assuming is the 1950s just by aesthetic. Morrilton is present day, which back then was like 2005. I think you can even say that kind of like Hank Hill, he's one of those people who just never left the 50s, mentally at least, so it kind of explains a bit of his behavior. Clay, as a child, was very much like Orel, God-fearing, naive, but there's a difference. Clay had loving parents, kind of.
That made me hold a gun.
Angela, remember your heart.
How could you?
It wasn't even low dead.
Don't you say that word.
I said low dead.
Arthur wanted Clay to be a man because back then, children weren't kids. They basically were adults who had to grow up very quickly, whereas Angela was perfectly content to spoil him and coddle him, because he was her precious only ever. Arthur had to essentially fight for his wife's attention with her own son, even if it meant getting the worst dinner because, hey, he's the precious only miracle, he needs it.
I'm done.
I'm going to go eat in the den.
Even though, like, no offense, it kind of helps to tell a kid no every now and again, especially if they're your own kid. And you remember all those lost commandments? Yes, you have Angela to thank for that.
Lost commandment business was cute when you were 6, but now it's just child.
When Moses smashed those tablets, the original count was...
keep saying it. Maybe someday you'll believe it.
63!
As she raised Clay to be a devout Christian and to use Christianity as a tool, which for her version of a tool was a coping mechanism for 10 reasons we'll get to.
Do you know how old your baby is?
Of course, he's 147 months.
He's 12 years old.
And 3 months?
I did the math and she's correct. Also, keep in mind that by the end of the show, Orel is around that age. So this is a pretty fitting thing. One of his favorite activities to do with his mother was to look at a scrapbook of their memories, but he wasn't allowed to look at the whole thing until one fateful day, when he learned that he wasn't her precious only ever. He was her precious only ever who actually was born alive.
We call it passing, and we try to forget that it's there. Like the word and everything it represents passes out of our memory.
Her 10 other pregnancies, none of them were viable, or they weren't born alive because of one reason or another, be it smoking or drinking or riding roller coasters.
God could explain why you stayed here with me. It must have been all that praying I did during the pregnancy with you. Do you know I didn't even smoke?
Which, to be fair, as far as she knew back then, they weren't causing problems, but you know what I mean. But by the time she was pregnant with Clay, she converted to Christianity, and all she did was pray and pray and pray. Hey, that rhymes. So she couldn't do any of that stuff, hence why he lived. But she never realized it and ended up thinking of it as a miracle, that she prayed that hard for a son and she eventually got one.
Do you mean to tell me that you are telling me that I'm not your precious only ever?
Well, you're my precious only living ever.
Of course, Clay was understandably shocked, but not because he didn't get to know his siblings, but because he wasn't the only thing in his mother's life, all because she coddled him that much, and he didn't know how to handle that. So as a cruel joke, he pretended to shoot himself with old Gunny and used ketchup as blood, even if he knew he wasn't supposed to show it to his mother.
Open your eyes! I want this prank and dead!
Don't you say that word!
I said it! Open your eyes, Clay!
What? Now, another thing I like is how they handled this. Clay is a child, yes, and on some level, children are and also aren't responsible for their own actions. Again, it depends. But Clay was told not to do it, and he still did. And he was still a little snot from day one, all because his mother gave him the Caillou treatment. Usually, in shows like this, to make a point about the cycle of abuse, they'll have the abusive parent, as a child, be as innocent as possible. Because blank slate theory, which I do kind of subscribe to. Like, maybe they could have turned out differently. Maybe, but unfortunately, some kids are just born bad and there's no changing that. Like, maybe Clay would have turned out differently if his other siblings were born, maybe not. Maybe he would have been a better person if his mother didn't spoil him. Maybe he could have grown out of being a brat. But no, what he did was unequivocally bad. And what's worse is that he knew his mother had a heart condition and such a prank would likely hurt her, even if it didn't kill her. And it actually does end up killing her. His mom ends up having a heart attack at the sight of what she thinks is his dead body and freaking dies. And he doesn't even care. I mean, he's a little upset, but not because his mom is dead, but because basically his caregiver is dead.
God, oh God, oh God!
Stop! That's 3 Lord's name in vains in a row!
Actually, Angela, saying the Lord's name in vain isn't like saying, oh my God, or Christ on a stick. It's using religion to justify your own lies, or stuff like that. Like, I can beat the F out of you and then kill your daisies because God told me to and he really didn't. What I like to research. Now, Clay's father is obviously pissed at what he did because, I hate to say it, he's got a point. Clay is 100% responsible for the death of his own mother, and both of them know it, but Clay shows no remorse.
I don't need any more of your leftovers.
You'll go to hell for saying there's no heaven.
Like, he legitimately knew what he was doing. It's not like Powder where, like, he meant to do something good. No, he meant to do something bad. Obviously, he didn't expect for his mom to die, but such an event caused Arthur to lose his connection to Christianity, which makes sense. I don't think he was that firm of a believer. Maybe in, like, traditional male roles, but he only really did Christianity because of his wife. He was going to slap Clay for what he did, but then he decided that's probably what Clay wanted, so...
You're not even worth it.
Not worth it?
And those words made Clay believe that on some level, abuse was love, or he'd only be paid attention to by his father if he was naughty or he got hit, and by being a little snot. However, Arthur does reluctantly uphold the tradition of Old Gunny, even if he says,
I don't want this in my possession anymore. It's tainted with blood.
I think you mean ketchup. Go ahead, dude, slap me.
Sure it's not just ketchup?
Clay, I'd slap you, but you're not even worth it. What I find interesting is that if the show went on, we'd find out that Arthur was kind of one of those raise your kids, spoil your grandkids kinds of people, where he majorly realized he screwed up as a father, and he'd be a stellar grandfather to Orel, to the point where Orel just pictures him as like this loving person. Wow, did F is for Family rip the show off? We eventually did get a special of sorts where kid Orel spends a few months living with his grandfather, and Arthur does want to reconcile with Clay, which he doesn't have to, that's his right. If a parent was abusive, you have every right to not want them in your own life once you have the means to leave them. But one of the reasons Clay is the way he is, or the way he is to Orel at least, is out of spite for how his father treated him, as in Clay and Orel. Now, there was hope to break the cycle, and now they just can't. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how he met Blabberta and why they married. Well, why not? It's a funny story. On Blabberta's side of things, she mostly married because she was expected to. Since in the Bible, women's only role is to be submissive to man and make babies. Like, she isn't even a person, she's just a glorified object. And all of her friends got married but her and hated her for it.
Oh, it's so nice to feel wanted. I hope you'll all be at my engagement party tonight.
Living under his mother's example, Clay actually grew up to be a kind of nice person. He meant well. He didn't even drink. And they met at a wedding. Not of a mutual friend, but at a mutual church. Did Bojack rip this show off? Clay was basically an older version of Orel. But Blabberta needed somebody to take care of, and she needed an ideal man, which meant encouraging him to drink.
Hurt. I don't like that feeling.
Do you like this?
Yeah. Oh. Oh, you're so cold.
And then propose once he's good and wasted, just so she didn't have to be a Christmas cake and so he could marry just as society said a man was supposed to, before they properly knew each other. Hey, misery loves company, and both grew up in abusive, controlling homes. Misery loves company, and misery loves trauma bonding. Season 3 eventually has Clay's actions be shown as pathetic to everyone, and for them to realize, wow, we idolize this guy, how that image is finally shattered, even if his wife knows how trapped they both are and can only cry in private, but refuses to take off her own mask of indifference around him. Oh, and BGW, we find out in Season 3, he has an Oedipus complex, meaning he has like a mommy kink, which makes sense considering how his mother enmeshed him, but he gave Liberta crap for cheating with Coach Stopframe. Well, at least from his perspective, Censordoll can't have children, since she was surgically mutilated by her mother as an infant. In one episode, he tries to pick a bar fight with the other men of the town, aka better role models for Orel than him, even if they all have their own shortcomings, including Reverend Putty.
Oh, you better go too, Revs. Let the men handle this.
How would your teeth like a 5-finger discount on a knuckle sandwich, Puppington?
And when they all decide it's not worth it, they leave him alone to wallow, including the bartender. And does he learn his lesson? No.
It looks like the only fists that are raised in this town are pacifists. Yeah, run, get out of here, cowards! Look at you!
Ironically, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they attack him, they only validate to him that abuse is love, and he's ready to keep inflicting it on others, including them, even if they can only see a broken, evil man who refuses to change. If they don't, they will just make him feel unloved and prove to him his worldview is correct. And yet, Clay is so far gone that he can't accept responsibility for his actions, even when he's sober. So all they can do is remove themselves and hope he gets better, with hope being the biggest one. And also an episode. Heck, in the episode before Honor, we find out that Orel has started to hate him so much that he's actually running a campaign against his father by helping the Censordoll, and he's no longer afraid of him. When Clay takes him to the study and goads him, he just sits there and takes it, do it.
Thing called eating? Well, say goodbye to that thing forever if I lose my position in this town because of you.
I will.
Okay.
Because, yes, turn the other cheek, I think he actually implemented. Yes, I do think you should defend yourself, but for some people, just, not encouraging it is very big. Because it makes them realize their actions have no effect on you. Good for you, Orel. Good for you. Now we got to Honor. The last produced episode, aka the last episode of the whole show, has Clay end on a sad yet karmatic note that he 100% deserves. Christmas time has come again, and yet Orel cannot properly enjoy it. He can't even think of the idea of honoring your parents, which my opinion of it is what Family Guy said. It doesn't mean you have to like them. Now, when you come from a broken home, you tend to collect mommy and daddy substitutes like Pokemon cards. And who does Orel go to? Well, it's not Reverend Putty, since he already has a daughter. He goes to Coach Stopframe.
Orel, what's wrong with your face?
Golly, why?
It looks just like you.
Oh, yeah. It's been like that for a while now.
Coach Stopframe, I will be honest with you, isn't a saint by any stretch. Remember, this is the same dude who impregnated his mom and tried to use Orel as a sacrifice at a satanic ritual, and only gave up not because he had a change of heart, but because all the Satanists looked disgusting. But I like how Danielle finally realizes he should put that all behind him, and he was wrong to think the way he did. How wrong he was to trust Clay or to keep going after him, even if it meant deluding Blaberta into thinking he cared, or ignoring the fact that the one most caught up in all of this was Orel himself, since JB is still a kid, but he doesn't know what's going on. Orel does, and he suffered the brunt of it. Orel confesses to Coach Stopframe that his father was the one to shoot him.
Or the bear shot me.
Or that you got between the bear and him.
Oh, a new one, I guess.
He's got a million of them, kid.
No, I know some people don't like this ending, but I do. And I think it was a long time coming. He saw the signs. Remember, he was at Orel's movie premiere. Also, he's a coach, and they are also trained to look for signs. Plus, I feel it's easy for him to forget that Clay is a bad person when he never sees it, and it only really happens behind closed doors. He wasn't in Sacrifice, even if he probably should have been. So Coach Stopframe decides to spend the whole day with Orel and give him the Christmas he never got, teaching him how to ice skate or decorating a tree or showing him physical affection. And while Orel realizes that Stopframe was with Clay, well, Stopframe does give him some very good advice.
Because there's nothing honorable about him.
Somehow, in his own blundering way, your father made you. And that's honorable.
I don't know how to take this, but he has a point. What ruins it? Clay. Clay is now jealous that his own son is having an actually good Christmas without him, and he goes Christmas caroling to bring him down. And when he finds out he's at Danielle's, he's really jealous, and he has the nerve to call him a corrupting deviant.
The thought of the two of you together makes my skin crawl.
Please, all we were doing was having a nice time. for the first Christmas in I don't know how long.
You're one to talk. Also, fun fact, this is the only episode where he truly says I love you. Oh, not to Orel, but to Danielle.
I love you. 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 Orel?
Unfortunately for Clay, his side piece has had enough and permanently breaks off what they had. And one Christmas several decades later, we see that Orel grew up to be everything that Clay wasn't. A good father, a good brother, he finally broke the cycle. And likely as a middle finger, he does honor his father, if only because he has to. While Clay likely wallows away forgotten. And wow, just wow, this show is something. Christ on a stick, I have nothing else to say, so bye.